This is a reading from The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, Chapter 19, on the practices of a good religious. The life of a good religious should shine with all the virtues that he may be inwardly as he appears outwardly to men. Indeed, there should rightly be far more inward goodness than appears outwardly, for God himself searches all hearts. We must revere him above all things, and live purely in his sight as the angels. Each day we should renew our resolution and bestir ourselves to fervor, as though it were the first day of our conversion, and say, Help me, O Lord God, in my good resolve, and in your holy service. Grant me this day to begin perfectly, for hitherto I have accomplished nothing. As our purpose is, so will our spiritual progress be, and we need to be truly diligent if we wish to progress far. For if a man of firm resolution often encounters failure, how can any who seldom make any firm resolve achieve anything? We fail in our purposes in various ways, and the light omission of our spiritual exercises seldom passes without certain loss to our souls. The resolution of good men depends more on the grace of God than on their own wisdom, and they put their whole trust in him in all their undertakings. Man proposes, but God disposes. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. And man's destiny is not in his own hands. Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23. If any of our proper exercises are omitted in order to perform some act of mercy or help a brother, they may be resumed later. But if they are lightly set aside out of sloth or carelessness, this is blameworthy indeed, and will prove harmful to our souls. Try as we will, we shall still fail all too easily in many things. Nevertheless, we should always have a firm resolve, especially against such faults as most hinder our progress. We should carefully examine and order both our inner and outer life, since both are vital to our advance. Although we cannot always preserve our recollection, yet we must do so from time to time, and at the least once a day, either in the morning or the evening. In the morning form your intention, and at night examine your conduct, what you have done, said, and thought during the day, for in each of those you may have often offended both God and your neighbor. Arm yourself manfully against the wickedness of the devil. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 2. Control the appetite, and you will more easily control all bodily desires. Never be entirely idle, but be reading or writing, in prayer or in meditation, or else be engaged in some work for the common good. But undertake manual employments with discretion, for they are not to be practiced by all men alike. Those spiritual exercises which are not obligatory should not be made in public, for whatever is purely personal is best done in private. Take care not to become careless in the common observances, preferring your personal devotions. But when you have fully and faithfully fulfilled all that you are bound to do, then, if there be time left, employ it in your own devotions. All cannot use the same kind of spiritual exercises, but one suits this person and another that. Different devotions are suited also to the seasons, some being best for the festivals and others for ordinary days. We find some helpful in temptations, others in peace and quietness. Some things we like to consider when we are sad, and others when we are full of joy in the Lord. At the great festivals, good spiritual exercises should be renewed, and the prayers of the saints implored more fervently than ever. From one festival to another, we should resolve so to live, as though we were then to depart from this world and come to the heavenly feast. During holy seasons, therefore, we should prepare ourselves with care, and live ever more devoutly, keeping every observance more strictly, as though we were soon to receive the reward of our labors from God himself. If this reward be delayed, let us consider that we are not yet ready or worthy of the great glory which will be revealed. Romans chapter 8, verse 18. In us at the appointed time, and let us strive to prepare ourselves better for our departure from this world. Blessed is the servant, writes Luke the evangelist, whom the Lord, when he comes, will find ready. I tell you truly that he will set him over all his possessions. Matthew chapter 24, verse 47. Chapter 20. On the love of solitude and silence. Choose a suitable time for recollection, and frequently consider the loving kindness of God. Do not read to satisfy curiosity or to pass the time, but study such things as move your heart to devotion. If you avoid unnecessary talk and aimless visits, listening to news and gossip, you will find plenty of suitable time to spend in meditation on holy things. The greatest saints used to avoid the company of men. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 38. Whenever they were able, and chose rather to serve God in solitude. A wise man once said, "As often as I have been among men, I have returned home a lesser man." Seneca, Epistles, chapter 7. We often share this experience when we spend much time in conversation. It is easier to keep silence together than not to talk more than we should. It is easier to remain quietly at home than to keep due watch over ourselves in public. Therefore, whoever is resolved to live an inward and spiritual life must, with Jesus, withdraw from the crowd. Mark chapter 6, verse 31. No man can live in the public eye without risk to his soul, unless he who would prefer to remain obscure. No man can safely speak, unless he who would gladly remain silent. No man can safely command, unless he who has learned to obey well. No man can safely rejoice, unless he possesses the testimony of a good conscience. The security of the saints was grounded in the fear of God, nor were they less careful and humble because they were resplendent in great virtues and graces. But the security of the wicked springs from pride and presumption, and ends in self-deception. Never promise yourself security in this life, even though you seem to be a good monk or a devout hermit. Those who stand highest in the esteem of men are most exposed to grievous peril, since they often have too great a confidence in themselves. It is therefore more profitable to many that they should not altogether escape temptations, but be often assailed, lest they become too secure and exalted in their pride, or turn too readily to worldly consolations. How good a conscience would he keep if a man never sought after passing pleasures, nor became preoccupied with worldly affairs? If only a man could cast aside all useless anxiety, and think only on divine and salutary things, how great would be his peace and tranquility. No one is worthy of heavenly comfort unless they have diligently exercised themselves in holy contrition. If you desire heartfelt contrition, enter into your room and shut out the clamor of the world, as it is written, "Commune with your own heart, and in your chamber, and be still." Psalm chapter 4, verse 4. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 20. Within your cell you will discover what you will only too often lose abroad. The cell that is dwelt in continually becomes a delight, but ill kept it breeds weariness of spirit. If in the beginning of your religious life you have dwelt in it and kept it well, it will later become a dear friend and a welcome comfort. In silence and quietness the devout soul makes progress and learns the hidden mysteries of the Scriptures. Ecclesiasticus chapter 34, verses 1 to 3. There she finds floods of tears in which she may nightly wash and be cleansed. Psalm 6, verse 6. For the further she withdraws from all the tumult of the world, the nearer she draws to her Maker. For God, with his holy angels, will draw near to him who withdraws himself from his friends and acquaintances. It is better to live in obscurity and to seek the salvation of his soul than to neglect this even to work miracles. It is commendable in a religious, therefore, to go abroad but seldom, to avoid being seen, and to have no desire to see men. Why do you long to see that which is not lawful for you to possess? The world itself passes away, and all the desires of it. 1 John chapter 2, verse 17. The desires of the senses call you to roam abroad, but when their hour is spent, what do you bring back but a burdened conscience and a distracted heart? A cheerful going out often brings a sad homecoming, and a merry evening brings a sorry morning. For every bodily pleasure brings joy at first, but at length it bites and destroys. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 31 and 32. What can you see elsewhere that you cannot see here? Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 10. Look at the sky, the earth, and all the elements, for of these all things are made. What can you see anywhere under the sun that can endure for long? You hope, perhaps, to find complete satisfaction, but this you will never do. Were you to see all things at present in existence spread out before your eyes, what would it be but an unprofitable vision? Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 11. Lift up your eyes to God on high. Psalm 121, chapter 1, and Isaiah chapter 40, verse 26. And beg forgiveness for your sin and neglectfulness. Leave empty matters to the empty-headed, and give your attention to those things that God commands you. Shut your door upon you. Matthew chapter 6, verse 6. And call upon Jesus the beloved. Remain with him in your cell, for you will not find so great a peace anywhere else. Had you never gone out and listened to idle talk, you would the better have remained perfectly at peace. But if it pleases you to hear the news of the world, you must always suffer disquiet of heart as a result.